Welcome to Motherhood in ADHD. I'm your friend, Patricia Sen. My mission is to be a lighthouse for mothers with ADHD, helping you find your path to success by learning to appreciate your ADHD as an asset. I'm seeking to change the paradigm that ADHD means your life is doomed to be a hot mess. So I'm sharing strategies and encouraging you in your pursuit of happiness to love who you are every day of your ADHD life. Hey there, Successful Mama. It's your friend, Patricia. Well, it is the last day of October. Happy Halloween. And that means it's the last day of ADHD Awareness Month. So we are going out with a bang and wrapping up the month with another Ask the Experts episode. So the theme for ADHD Awareness Month this year was myths and facts, know the difference. And my take on this, know your strengths, not your weaknesses. Because we with ADHD are pretty aware of our weaknesses. We need to just let that go. If you need to work on that, you can look back at last week's episode. I'd like to say my episode is probably a little bit of a rant about letting go of our weaknesses and not focusing on that and rewriting the soundtrack we play in our head to focus on what we're good at. We are amazing mamas. We are great at what we do. And I think that ADHD really gives us a gift on so many strengths that a neurotypical mom may not have. So it's time to stop worrying about all the things we didn't do right and focus on what we do well. For example, our ADHD gives us great creativity. We are often much smarter than your average bear. And we can problem solve on the fly with the best of them. Like if you need a last minute show and tell idea while you're in the carpool drop-off line, we got you covered and it's going to be great. Because once you say the deadline is now, we've got it done. Now to help empower you to think about what are all the things that you do amazingly well, as a mom with ADHD, I reached out into the ADHD community and have brought you some Powerhouse ADHD mom role models. I don't choose experts in the traditional sense. I choose women that are living the ADHD life every day and succeeding at it. So I asked them, which of your Ninja Mom skills do you attribute to your ADHD? Tell me a story of when that skill came in handy or saved the day. Now, before I introduce you to my first guest, you can find all of these ladies' contact information in the show notes on my website, so that you can connect with them and support the work that they are doing in the ADHD community. All right, so let's get into reminding ourselves why we are awesome mamas. First up is Stacey Turis. Now, Stacey has truly dedicated her life to helping others live well. She is an author, she is a mindful athlete and life coach, and she is one bad A mama. So let's hear from Stacey.
This is Stacey Turis, author of Here's to Not Catching Our Hair on Fire and ADHD Superhero on Facebook. One of my most favorite Ninja Mom skills is authenticity. So one day my kids were about 4 and 6. It was morning time. I was trying to get them through breakfast. It was insane. Not a good day. Finally, I ended up losing it, right? I had this big plastic bottle of gummy vitamins in my hand. I just launched it straight onto the kitchen counter, which also happened to be holding a newly brewed carafe of coffee, which happened to explode. So coffee went everywhere. Shards of glass went everywhere. The kids are looking at me like I'm insane. I'm thinking, oh my God, I just set the worst example ever. I started laughing. The kids are crying. I ran over to them to hug them, thinking, how do I recover from this? And I thought my only saving grace is to set a good example on what to do after you've made a bad decision. So basically, I owned what I did. I apologized, told them that I would never do it again, and it never has happened. And the kids still give me a hard time about it. But the authenticity stuck in their heads that I was a real person just like them at that moment, and not just a grown-up who knows everything. And I think that allowed them to feel good about now sharing the details of their teenager lives with me, even the stuff I definitely don't want to know.
Can I get an amen? How many of us have been there before? I was so thankful that Stacey was so honest to share that with us, because it is hard to own up for those times when we're kicking ourselves for the choices that we made. But here's the thing, we've all been there. Our kids can push our buttons like no one else. But I love how she says that in owning up to how things went wrong, that's how she built trust in her kids later on in their teenage years. That's a really great role model for me as a mom with younger kids, knowing that sowing these seeds of honesty and authenticity into our motherhood is paying off down the road. We are not infallible beings. We are going to make mistakes. But we can teach our kids how to work through those times when we mess up. It's okay to say, I messed up. It's okay to say, I don't know the answer to that. Or, hey, I'm sorry, that did not go well. And that's where we build trust. You don't build trust with people when things are going swimmingly. That's not when people rate companies with 5 stars when things just went great, just as we expected. No, people build trust and want to do business with other people when they've been through the ringer together, when there was a problem and that person solved the issue, right? So the same thing with our kids, we're building their trust in us when we are open and honest and say, hey, wow, that was not good, but we're going to work through it together. And I am hopeful through that authenticity that I too will have what Stacey has with her kids, that they're willing to talk to me about when they mess up because they know that I'm not perfect. They're willing to come to me for advice because I showed them and I modeled with them when they were younger, how do we deal with those times where we struggled? So thank you, Stacey. That was beautiful. And I also feel like I should side note here, if you feel like that's not where you are with your kids, please know that it is never too late to build a better relationship with your kids. It doesn't matter if they're 2 or 12 or 32, you can always build a better relationship with your children. You can be authentic with them. You can be open with them and rebuild that relationship if you feel like that's where you're struggling. Please don't hear that as like a guilty condemnation sidebar. Like, if this is a huge struggle point for you, please reach out and get some help. You can do better with your anger issues. Okay, next up is Laura, the ADHD mama. Now, I first heard about Laura on, I think it was Liz Lewis's podcast, which I really like. And I just fell in love with her interview with Laura because Laura is so relatable. Her story is so funny how she ended up making these hilarious YouTube videos about being a mom with ADHD. So highly recommend checking those out. They're entertaining for sure. But Laura's been on the scene talking about ADHD as a mom for a while now. And so we can look to her as one of our ADHD mama role models to see how we can enjoy life. Even when things are a hot mess, we can still put a positive spin on it. So let's hear from Laura.
Hi, this is Laura, the ADHD mama, and I'm here to talk about my Ninja Mom skills when it comes to ADHD. So my Ninja Mom skill is empathy. I have a lot of empathy and understanding for my daughters. One of my daughters has ADHD and one doesn't, and I spend a lot of my time trying to think of things from their perspective. My youngest is in grade primary. She is in French in maternelle. And she has had her first 2 days of homework so far. The first day did not go so well. My husband tried to help because he's the one that actually speaks French in the family. And it ended up with her in tears, and she's upstairs and hiding, and she's so upset. My husband was really frustrated because he didn't understand what she was going through. So I took a crack at the homework, and I was able to get her to count in French. And then today, this happened today actually, we had to get her to write out her address and then write out how old she is and things like that. So I have these sandpaper numbers, and I was thinking outside the box, and I understand how people struggle to be able to do work. So I used the sandpaper letters, we high-fived a whole bunch, and she had a blast, and she was able to write her name and our address and how old she is.
Okay, so Laura totally stole my answer. Mine would have been empathy, for sure. Because helping her daughter with her French homework wasn't about Laura's French knowledge, which she admittedly said, definitely not my strong point. What she was able to do, though, is identify with her daughter. What was she struggling with? And emotionally letting her daughter get to a place where she could learn, because that's one of the biggest struggles for kids, whether or not they have ADHD. If they're not in the mindset for learning, they're not going to absorb anything. When things are heated or when they're grumpy or they're hungry, whatever struggle's going on, kids have trouble learning. So for us to be able to sit with them, as someone with ADHD, I know that emotional regulation is something I really struggle with. We can put ourselves in our kids' shoes because kids are constantly changing. They're constantly growing. The hormones all over the place. It's hard to be a kid. Sometimes we forget about how in their life, everything's always changing. Their body's always changing. Everything's changing. So helping them to find that place of calm before we start learning is a huge benefit, because we know how that is. And then she pulled something out of her Mary Poppins sack that was like, okay, I know the sandpaper thing worked before. Let me try it in a new way. And just knowing your child, which I think sometimes we feel like we don't know our kids well enough, but we do. We know them so well. There's always going to be things that we don't know, but you know what works well for your child. And once you figure those out, you can apply them in different ways, and we can use our creativity to take those skills and apply them in new and creative ways to help them learn something new. All right, so the homework struggle is a very familiar one. And the school bus struggle is another one that many of us have dealt with. So Jaclyn Paul is also an author. She has a really great blog too. There's a really great post she did recently about learning time through manipulatives. And I was like, oh, I need to do this like ASAP. But time blindness is a huge issue for people with ADHD. So I recommend going back to that. So let's hear from Jaclyn about her school bus incident.
Hi, Jaclyn from the ADHD Homestead here. So my kiddo got into trouble on the school bus recently, and this was one of those incidents where my own parents would have totally blown a gasket, given me some sort of punishment, like you're grounded, privileges taken away, whatever. And I want to be transparent about the fact that I did blow a gasket. I did yell at my kid. I didn't hold back about how angry and embarrassed and disappointed I was about what had happened. But I also understand more about what ADHD is and where this behavior comes from. And I remember getting into the same kind of trouble myself when I was a kid. And so I knew that my kid has such a big heart, and what happened was not him. He was already feeling so many negative consequences, like inside himself about this. He was going to have social consequences the next day, probably. And a big punishment from me layered on top of all that was going to hurt him more than it was going to help him. And I think this is a privilege that my parents didn't have, this kind of understanding of what's going on and this separation of behavior from character, especially in these impulsive moments. And so it certainly doesn't make it easy. But after I got done yelling, I did talk to him about why it happened and what happened, and talked about the actual problem we needed to solve. And that's something that I've gotten from my own experience with ADHD.
Now, I love this situation because I know we've all been there where we look at our kid and the choice that they made, and we're just going, what were you thinking? And I quickly learned teaching middle school that normally when I ask kids the question, they didn't have an answer because the answer was they weren't. Kids do dumb stuff all the time. They make choices where you're like, oh my goodness, seriously, that was your best option? And the thing is, they just don't think that far ahead. Now, if your kid has ADHD, they surely didn't think that far ahead. So these kind of situations would remind me daily in teaching that it is our jobs as mamas to instill these skills into our kids, helping them walk through these tough situations and how do we solve them. And I love that she was able to step back after the initial freak out and say, okay, how do I give him the best consequence and advice in this situation? Because Jaclyn was able to recognize he's already going to have social consequences for this. And layering on more punishment, for a lack of a better word, isn't necessarily the best course of action because he's already got to deal with the stuff going on with his friends. That's an important piece that we have to teach our kids. How do you repair that friendship? How do you deal with other people making comments or making fun of you and the choices that you made? There's so much more to a situation when our kids have problems with a friend. And depending on their age, when they're dealing with like middle school and high school, a lot of times the consequence they get in their friends and peer reactions is a far stronger deterrent than we could ever give with whatever our punishment is for the situation. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any punishment ever. I'm just saying that because Jaclyn was able to have the clarity to say, okay, I've been down this road before. I understand there's more to this situation than just the issue at hand. How can I do the best by my son? Because he's going to need help on learning how to apologize, how to repair the broken relationship that went along with whatever decisions were made on the school bus. And granted, I don't know what happened, so I'm just reading into, past experiences from my teaching, but seizing that opportunity to help our kids learn the steps of how to deal with the fallout of whatever happened, that's a huge win as a mom to be able to set our own feelings aside, which is hard to do, and help them walk through that. What a gift Jaclyn gave to her son in that situation. And knowing, going back to like what Stacey said, when she sows those seeds of, I understand what you're going through. I understand that this was hard. Let's walk through the tough stuff together. She's setting up that relationship for later so that her son knows as he grows older, he can come back to her and be okay saying, wow, I really messed up, Mom. What do I do about this? How do I fix this? I think that's just a beautiful gift we can give our kids. And having been through the social struggles with ADHD, I think we just understand that a little better, and we can be more quick to understand, more quick to be authentic, more quick to be empathetic because we've been through a similar situation that we can pull from and share with our kids. Because we talked about this back in episode 21 when we talked about lifelong potty training. These kind of skills of growing relationships, this is something that we have to work on with our kids for years. This isn't like a bam, you know how to use the potty, now we never talk about it again. No, that's not how potty training works. You're there showing them how to wipe butts for months, if not years. No, years, definitely years. So when we're teaching them these kind of skills, these are skills that we're working on for years with them. Because as you know, if you have teenagers, when you talk about those things in non-crisis time, it all kind of goes in one ear and out the other because it's not relevant to them at this very moment. But when our kids are in the middle of struggle, they're far more likely to listen to you, even though they're going to roll your eyes at you and pretend like they have no clue how you could possibly know anything about anything. But they are going to be able to absorb it better because it's relevant to them right now. I mean, teenagers are in the now people, and so are we. Okay. All right. So my last guest is Tracy Otsuka. Tracy is a podcast host. I love her podcast for ADHD women. And I also love finding ADHD women who have done hard things that people think ADHD people can't do, like Tracy's a lawyer. I love finding those role models for myself and sharing them with you because we can do hard things. Are they extra hard? Yeah, they are. But we still can do them when we have the motivation to get there. And here's Tracy.
This is Tracy Otsuka with the podcast ADHD for Smartass Women. My ADHD superpower, it's to challenge the status quo. Always. I think ADHD is misnamed. It's not a deficit of attention, it's a surplus of attention. We are interested in so much. Look, when my son was diagnosed at 12, we met with the psychologist because we knew nothing about ADHD. I thought it meant that you were stupid, yet I knew just how brilliant my son was. That psychologist, she told me that my job as his parent was to reduce his expectations so he wouldn't be disappointed in life. Really? 8 months later, I was diagnosed. What if my parents had believed that same psychologist? I would have never finished college or law school or graduate law school. Our ADHD brains, they're wired for interest, not importance. It doesn't matter what our parents, our teachers, our friends think is important. If we don't think it's important, we're not going to do it. But if we're interested, that dopamine will kick in and, well, you know what happens then, right? Hyperfocus. You know what the secret is? Stop trying to fit in. You're not made to fit in. You are made to stand out. You're made to lead in something by focusing on your strengths, not your weaknesses. When you discover where you stand out, you'll not only change your life, but you'll change the world.
Mic drop. I'm not sure how I'm going to follow Tracy, but I'm going to try. So I love how she talks about advocating for her child. That's so much of our job as moms, is advocating for our child, whether or not they have something going on or they're just your usual kid, which, I mean, really, is there a usual kid? No. But either way, because we've struggled at some point with our ADHD, we know what that's like, and we're willing to step out and push for the best for our babies. So I think that's a huge ADHD mama ninja skill. But I love Tracy's mindset of standing out. There's nothing wrong with our brains. They are just different. We do things in a different way. We don't have to do them like everyone else. And that's tying in with the theme of this whole month for me, is that knowing who you are and what you are great at and just modifying our mindset. Oh my goodness, I love mindset. Sorry, y'all are probably tired of hearing me say the word mindset, but there are so many of us like this that it's not really an anomaly anymore. At this point, there's enough of us that we're a solid group, and we need to harness the power that we've been given with this amazing brain that does so many things amazingly well. But we have to change the way that we look at it. It can't just be what we can't do. We need to look at what we're great at. And I love that Tracy said, you are meant to lead where your strength is. We just have to let go of what everyone else's expectations are and find you are good at something. If you don't know what that is, you can find it. I promise you, you have it. You just have to figure it out. It is there lurking somewhere under the surface, but it is there. It always makes me so sad when I talk to people who are like, well, I don't really think I have any gifts. I don't really think there's nothing really special about me. No, that is a lie. Stop telling yourself that. You are amazing at something. It's just a matter of identifying it. And a lot of times that special something, you've heard before that doesn't matter, but that person's opinion is the one that doesn't matter. What you are great at can be used for amazing things. So mamas, please connect with these 4 amazing women. Read their blogs, their books, listen to their podcasts, visit their websites, watch their videos. They are all out in the community spreading awareness of ADHD and the beauty in it, the power in it. And I want you to grow in that confidence in what you can accomplish, because these 4 women didn't get a special ribbon and say, oh, you 4 are the gifted ones and you shall speak about ADHD. No, it doesn't work like that. We all have the power to speak out and share who we are and what makes us great, and then lead when you find that strength in there that you can do better than everyone else. Go with it. Find a way to use that skill to not only better your life and your family's life, but the people around you. ADHD doesn't look like just one thing. We are all united through our ADHD, but yet you look at these 4 amazing women and they are so different. You can tell in the way that they tell their stories, in the way that they share their experiences. They're all very different personalities. And so I want you to hear that and feel that and know that you too, even though you have a different personality in there lurking somewhere, is something that makes you so amazing. And I want you to find that, mama. Embrace it, enjoy it, share it with others. Well, that's all for today. So we will talk again next Thursday. Until then, remember that when the mothering gets tough, the tough get to mothering, and you are one tough and successful mama. If you loved today's episode, please share it with another mama and spread the encouragement. I'll talk to you soon, successful mama.
Thank you for listening to Motherhood and ADHD. For more resources, head over to our website, www.motherhoodandadhd.com.